Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the definitions assignment. The first thing I want you to do, as always, is make sure that you're aware of the rough draft due date and the final draft due date as they are apply. Make sure you take note of these, mark them down on your calendar, or put them into Google Calendar, which is something that I'm fond of doing, so that you can make sure that you stay on track. So for this assignment, you're going to be picking a tool that you use in your vocation or avocation. So, in plain words, a tool that you use in your job or in one of your hobbies. This should be a tool that you're familiar with and that you're aware of its uses. In this context, a tool is an object that enables a user to perform some aspect of work. An example would be a calculator enables a user to perform mathematical operations. So doing this assignment is going to require some research, and if you quote or paraphrase a source, you must cite it. Be sure to use or include URLs or names of documents in your text. I prefer that you use MLA 8, but really as long as you're trying to use MLA to cite your source, I'm not going to be a big stickler for the formatting of the citation. I just want to make sure that you're citing your source period. So if you're more familiar with APA or another type of Chicago style formatting, you can use those. I'm familiar with those as well. Just make sure that you're citing your sources. As far as choosing a tool is concerned, I've had chefs in this course choose to use their Hobart machine as their mixing machine as their tool. I've had people use chainsaws as their tool. Some people have chosen to use a pencil as their tool. So you can choose a complicated tool or a complex tool, or you can choose something very simple like a pencil. Now, as far as this assignment is concerned, you have to write 3 types of definitions. Once you've chosen your tool, and I advise that you choose your tool within the next week. That's the most difficult part for a lot of people in this assignment, is choosing the tool, because you're going to be using that tool to write the next 3 papers for this course. And you have to stay with the same tool because the papers build off of one another. So, you'll be writing 3 types of definitions for this one assignment. An informal definition, and for the informal definition, you're going to define the tool for a 10-year-old child who's come into contact with the tool but doesn't know its name. So this audience only needs a brief definition that will help him or her to remember the tool and associate the name with the work the tool performs. And remember, for this definition, you are writing for a 10-year-old child. You might want to think back on weeks 2 and 3 and a little bit of 4 and how we discuss the ways that we analyze audience. The second type of definition you're going to write is a formal definition. The formal definition defines the tool for a graduate from a vocational, technical, high school who has never encountered the tool but has learned a little bit about the work that the tool performs. You should use a classical formal definition that enables the reader to associate the task the tool performs with the group to which it belongs. So you're going to be talking about the classification of it. This definition should not exceed 2 sentences. Now you're using a different audience for this tool, for this definition. So for the first definition, it's informal. It's geared towards a 10-year-old child. The second definition is formal, and it's geared towards a graduate from a vocational or high school. The third and final definition is the expanded definition. This definition defines the tool for a college-educated, non-technical adult who doesn't know how the tool functions and has never encountered one. So think about maybe me, for example, especially if you're an engineer and you're choosing a tool that you work with that you think I might not be familiar with, or if you're in software development or anything of that nature. I'm sure there are plenty of types of tools that you use that I'm not going to be familiar with. And so your audience really for the expanded definition is someone like me. This definition will help the person to recognize the tool and know when, where, and why, and how to use it. So be sure to answer those questions within your definition. This definition also consists of 3 parts. Your expanded definition should start with a formal definition. So it's going to actually start with these 2 lines from the second definition. This is the formal definition up here. Then the middle is going to contain either a description, etymology, history, or analogy regarding your tool. This is the part where people usually cite another source. And again, I want you to make sure that you cite the source where you get your information. You can conclude the definition with an example or an illustration. The illustration can be something that you create yourself or something that you find. Again, make sure that it's a clear illustration so that I can see your tool. Also, make sure that you cite your source. And regarding an example, it can be an example of your tool or of how your tool is being used. Now remember, this is just 3 definitions. You aren't supposed to be worrying too much with how your tool is being used, but so much with just 3 definitions at this point. I know this sounds like a lot to do. If you've never done any technical writing before, this might seem scary. I want to assure you it's not as bad as it seems. When you first begin, it's a little tough, again, because you may not have done it before. But again, the first thing you need to do is make sure that you choose a tool. Choose a tool that you work with, choose a tool that you're familiar with, choose something that you use in your field, because it's going to be helpful for you to write about that and to become more familiar with it. I would again encourage you to choose that tool within a week. Get that out of the way. Choose your tool, and then I'm going to have a discussion board post put up so that you can actually post what your discussion board, on the discussion board, what your tool is going to be, and then I will approve it. Once you get that approval, I want you to go ahead and begin working on this. Everyone has a favorite within these definitions. For some people, writing for a 10-year-old child is easier than writing for a graduate from high school. It all depends on your own writing style and the audiences that you're familiar with communicating with. If you don't have a 10-year-old child or a brother or sister who's younger than you, think about your cousins. Think about what you knew when you were a 10-year-old. But make sure that you get in touch with these types of audiences as you're writing. It will help you. And as always, if you have any questions, please be sure to reach out to me. And if you want to look at some examples, it'll be very helpful to you to look in the folder for the definitions assignment, and you will find an example of this paper. I like to post this one. It's not perfect, but it's a good one. It's a person who took my class a while back, and she was in, her focus was education. She decided to write about a toy box. And I know that sounds like, okay, wow, that's a very simple and basic tool, and I wouldn't think of it as a tool, but it is. And she gives an informal definition here, so that you can see what the informal definition looks like. A formal definition. And remember, the formal definition doesn't go beyond 2 sentences long. That is a challenge. I understand that. It's something you need to be doing. And so the expanded definition, just as I mentioned in the instructions, goes along here. One thing I will point out in this paper, although this is what I consider a really good paper, I do not want you to use eHow to give me an example, or Wikipedia. Please do not use Wikipedia or eHow. She used it, and I let her do that, but I would rather you not do that. There are so many more sources you can pull from. There you have it. Thank you so much, and happy writing.